ZEIT Assignment 1, Data Breach Regulation in Australia, Ben Kingston. This presentation focuses on the importance of organisations keeping personal data safe and specifically the cyber data breach regulation in the Australian marketplace and the implication of recent changes to legislation. Access to information, both that of individuals and organisations, has value, and hence those who collect, own and control that information have an obligation to keep it safe and secure. Firstly, some context around what is a data breach. Most common definitions of a data breach include context around data being confidential, sensitive, identifiable or private information, which includes but is not limited to financial information such as bank or credit card details, health records, and personal identifiable information such as phone and address details. Additionally, there's a swathe of corporate sensitive information and intellectual property that would fall into this category. In terms of a breach, this is generally thought of when a cybercriminal infiltrates a system to steal information. However, according to IBM, this only accounts for approximately half of all data breaches. Breaches can include any exposure or loss of confidential data as a result of risks across process, people, or technology. These breaches are costly, with Telstra estimating an average cost of $2.64 million for every breach that occurs in Australia. For Australia's new mandatory notification laws, the concepts of unauthorised access and disclosure of information are important elements, as this is the concept of an eligible data breach, which refers to when a reasonable person would conclude there is a likelihood of causing harm. Australia has made these changes and mandated notification of data breaches. Data breaches can have a significant impact both on the individual whose information has been exposed and the organisation that has experienced the breach. Implications of individuals' information being breached range from physical harm through to financial and reputational loss. On the other side of the equation, it is the huge impact to the organisation who's lost the data, both real and reputational. In a recent PwnMon study, customer churn rates in Australia are as high as 6% for organisations who suffer a breach. The importance of breach notifications is also on numerous levels. The most practical importance is so that consumers can take steps to protect themselves or gain back control of their information in the case of a breach. But at another level, by implementing mandatory notifications, the importance of cybersecurity will be elevated within organisations, meaning better practices are implemented and our cyber industry lifts as a whole. More transparency means more information that cyber professionals across the industry will have to meet the challenges head-on and understand new threats and trends in the market. And finally, in general, more awareness due to data breach notifications will also help shift the general public's focus to being more cyber aware and understand the implications of poor cyber practices. In terms of catching up with other jurisdictions around cybersecurity policy and mandatory reporting, which has been addressed by changes to the Privacy Act, there has been regulation in place for some time surrounding obligations for maintaining the privacy of sensitive data. The overarching Australian Privacy Act 1988 governs the way in which businesses and government entities handle personal information. This is outlined under 13 Australian privacy principles, which include the handling of personal information, disclosing the collection of this information, and the security of this information. It is applicable to all federal government organisations and those with a turnover of more than $3 million per annum, also those that collect and disclose health records or personal details for profit. Specifically, Principle 11 specifies the requirement to ensure that steps are taken to protect personal information from misuse, interference and loss, and from the access and disclosure from unauthorised entities. There have been a number of criticisms over the years that although these principles are a good start, they don't go far enough, including the requirement for mandatory notification of breaches by organisations. There is a significant number of other regulatory frameworks that exist to protect Australian citizens' personal data. These include regulations for Australian companies listed on the stock exchange and also industry-specific regulations such as those for financial institutions from APRA and telecommunications companies from ACMA. There are also a number of international regulations that apply to specific industries or those organisations collecting information from citizens of other countries, such as the incoming European GDPR or the PCI DSS regulation of payment systems. However, after a number of years of both sides of the political divide trying to pass more stringent legislation, the Mandatory Data Breach Notification Amendment to the Privacy Act was passed in February of this year. The first bill of this kind was attempted in 2013, however was delayed due to the federal election and was reintroduced in 2015. After significant industry consultation and numerous concerns raised around the definitions of terms and the time period required to notify, the breach was redrafted in 2016. DB. It's an amendment to the Privacy Act that brings for the first time a requirement for impacted organisations to disclose if they've been breached and lost identifiable private data. It applies to all organisations impacted by the Privacy Act, so federal agencies and large business, plus healthcare and credit providers. If there is a reasonable grounds to believe there is an eligible breach, a business has 30 days to respond and notify the OAIC, and if practical, notify all affected individuals or disclose the breach on its website. Some people believe these laws weren't required given the year-on-year increase in notifications to the OAIC. However, others believe we should be even more stringent and follow the likes of California, whose laws impact a far wider array of business, including small business under 3 million turnover, and notifications need to be made instantly, not after 30 days. The success of these laws and how they compare to others being implemented or in place internationally will bear out in the next few months and years, but at least they will drive business and government in the right direction around this very important issue of cyber risk governance and cyber security.